Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this webinar on CAT claims, process, partnerships, technology. I'm very happy to be joined by a very eclectic and intelligent audience and panelists panel today. Chad Trosper, AVP, CAT claims at Tower Hill. I'm also joined by Jennifer Dixon, Senior Claims Specialist at Beasley, Matt Wilson, Executive Director of Catastrophic Claims at USAA, and Jeanette Hernandez, SVP at Clearspeed. Really, the background to the meeting today is based around a continuation in rise and in terms of the CAT events that we see globally. Um, Natural disasters from hurricanes to floods to earthquakes. There was a statistic in Moody's recently that stated that the global insured natural catastrophe losses have averaged about $100 billion over the past 5 years. So a significant part of the audience and the demographic that we're serving within the insurance industry. So we're going to look at this in terms of the CAT events, the innovative technology, the creative processes around that, and how we deal with that. So we'll go through a number of questions around it. But to begin with, let's just get to know our panelists a little better. So I would turn to Matt Wilson initially from USAA, just to give a brief introduction about yourself, Matt, and what you're prioritizing at the moment, what you're focusing on. Matt, please.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Graham, and hello to everyone out there. Thank you for joining. So if I haven't met you, my name is Matt Wilson. I have the privilege of working at USA, and specifically, I lead our catastrophe programs. And so all of our adjusting, both internal and external, and then our response functions. So typically, large-scale events, we're setting out a response team with different vehicles and equipment to help kind of be that boots on the ground, supporting and serving in that community. So, kind of in my 20-year career here with USA, I started as a frontline claims adjuster on the property side, and I've worked both in property and auto claims. But the CAT space has held a special place in my heart. Early on in my career, I got a chance to what we refer to as a deployment out on Hurricane Katrina, and got to go out and work a different myriad of complex claims, flood claims, and different stuff, and just seeing firsthand the damage, the devastation, and really what our members were going through, which is complete loss of homes, property, lives. Just really left an impression on me and kind of gave me what I would say has been a calling to serve in this space. And so kind of fast forward through a winding career here at USA, I now have a chance to lead all of our catastrophe teams. And so it's exciting to kind of dig in and expand both in the auto space and in the property space. I know we've got a bunch of topics and questions. Looking forward to get through that. I would outline that there's kind of three priorities or things that I know I'm thinking of today. There's a lot of other stuff always going on, but really it's around developing continued resiliency in this space. And so you don't always know when a cat's going to hit. You see a hurricane coming, but where it's going to hit and type of damage, you just don't know. Whether it's a tornado, whether it's a fire in Maui, we continue to see these what I'd call diverse situations. So having the right level of resiliency to respond appropriately is really important to us. Weather data insights. We're constantly looking at how do we leverage weather data to gain insights to say, what's the storm going to do? What's the impact? And how can we use that to protect lives, restore lives, and help get people back on their feet? And then last, but definitely not least, is strategic partnerships. This doesn't just happen with just the insurance company alone. Obviously, there's partners out there, there's restoration companies. And so we're always focused on making sure that those things are in place and looking at how do we continue to add capabilities to our portfolio. So thanks, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Matt. And I would definitely agree with you that in this specific place in claims, there is that slightly more charged emotional connection because we're talking about events which have huge impact on individuals' lives. And, insurance as a whole is around protection and security and people feeling like they can have that backup in terms of a huge company that can be there when they need them. And that's never been more true than in the cat claim space. Thanks for that introduction, Matt. Jennifer, can I turn to you, hear a little bit more about what you're focused on and your background?
Absolutely. I'm Jennifer Dixon. I've been handling property claims, residential and commercial, for about 14 years. My very first, the last 3.5 here at Beasley, but I literally was hired in the claims world during a catastrophe. So I jumped in with both feet. It was, high volume claims, stress. It was homeowners. So, there was a lot of emotion, and I think it set a certain mindset, obviously, with my career, is that customer focus and taking care of our people. But as you know, our jobs are twofold. We have that responsibility to our employers, the carrier, to make the right coverage decisions and do the right investigation and only pay what we owe, as well as balancing that customer service approach and make sure we're taking care of our face-to-face customers. And during my career, building those relationships with our external partners, with our field adjusters, with our engineers, our building consultants, and all the others, those relationships are so important to the way we, especially as desk adjusters. I don't, I'm not a field adjuster. I'm behind the camera, behind the phone, so I rely so heavily on my partnerships with my field adjusters and experts. And I I guess my focus recently has been watching all the new technology come into play and how we're utilizing it during our catastrophes and claims in general, and how it's changing the way we investigate and the timeline, which overall impacts that that customer satisfaction. If you can get things moving quickly and get money in their hands, and it just makes everything a little bit better. So just seeing all the new technology and how it is integrating into our jobs is fascinating and exciting.
Thanks, Jennifer. And it's an interesting point you make there because most of us here would have seen a timeline of technology influence, which has gone from, fringe to impactful to part of our day to day, and that's moving all of the time. So I definitely like to see later in the session maybe talk about how technology is playing more and more of an impactful role and where it's falling short as well, because technology is not the answer to everything by all means. Chad, can we hear a little bit about your background and why you're interested in cat claims and what you're focused on?
Yeah, so my name is Chad Trosper. I've been in the industry for about, I would say, close to 20 years. It's crazy thinking it's been that long, but so 20 years. I started as a field adjuster when all those storms crisscrossed Disneyland in Florida, Orlando, back in, what was that, '05? Um, that was my first time out in the field. There's a kind of curious stereotype with me. Wherever I change companies, a storm happens. So I finally got promoted to field. Boom, you got storms in Orlando. Then I got promoted with another company under Foremost Insurance. I don't know if you're familiar with that great company. Um, and then we had Katrina and Rita, not even a week after. Then I moved to Farmers. We had a couple big storms, and then I moved on over to Talbot Hill. And I think that's when we had our drought of 10 years where nothing hit Florida. And then bam, 2016. In 2017, we had, what was it, Hermine, Matthew, and Irma. So I bring storms with me, which I guess is good in some kind of aspect because I guess it's job security. But so that's kind of my background, about 20 years. Some of the things that we're focusing on, and I usually focus on this a lot, is we're going to revamp my CAT plan. Every year, I want to build partnerships that are reliable, outside resources, contractors, IAs, Make sure we have training. We work really hard on training. I built some curriculum online so that there's online certification. So we always focus on keeping people trained and keeping training accessible for people to continue training throughout. Technology, obviously a big one. I love technology, but I think there's a little bit of technology overkill when it comes in our business. We don't want to throw too many processes and everything out. I'm trying to find that one process that works, like aerial imagery, AI generation, and utilizing obviously customer portals for easy access for the insured so we can make things timely and quickly and keep that quality aspect. But I could go on for hours and all the things that we're dabbing into, but that's kind of the high level.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chad. That definitely gives us some insight, and we definitely know to track your movements because that really impacts on where the storms are going. Jeanette, can you give us a bit of a background on yourself and also Clearspeed, where they're interacting in the cat claims ecosystem, so people have that context?
Sure. So I've been on the P&C side for 30 years. My first storm was actually Andrew. So that was back when you had a Polaroid camera and a checkbook and no technology. So it's been really interesting to watch the different types of storms, the severity, how the industry is changing and adapting. And I think there's two kind of important things about cat claims from your standard claims, which is that's when we deliver the promise. That's when the rubber meets the road of what the insureds have paid for. So there's always this fine balance in claims of paying what you owe while providing best-in-class service, right? That's where one storm can shift your book and your market share in a half of a second. So I think today, to what everybody else, all the panelists have spoken about, it's really working the plan, right? Working the cat plan, but now you have tools and resources. So it's not only your internal cat people, but it's also those external IAs and things that people have mentioned. But how do you use technology smarter and faster, right? To make those decisions, to pay the claims that you know you owe. And then the ones that might need a little bit of investigation, because what we also have learned is when there's a flood claim, somebody inevitably is behind 7 payments and drives their car into the water. Like, how do you not stop the flow of what your cat plan is doing? And that's one of the things that really drew me to Clearspeed, is what it was a simple 3-minute questionnaire that asks specific questions designed by the carriers that allows you to get a very quick triage at FNOL to say, hey, these claims are the ones that can be fast-tracked, and these are ones that we want to put a little more time and energy and resource on, perhaps sending an IA out. But it gives you that insight with some kind of security and trust in the decision that you're making that I haven't seen in other CAT tools.
Thanks, Jeanette. Yeah, and a really pertinent point around internal versus external, and making sure that we are doing the absolute best ultimately for the claims customer in terms of their experience, and making sure that we have that intelligence and that vision and everything else as part of that process. So just to zoom in on the current situation and the current environment, Matt, can you talk a little bit about the state of play in the US around cat frequency and severity, and consequently, what does that mean for claims experiences at the moment and the insurers? What's the current environment that you see?
Yeah, I would say it's one that's unpredictable. You go back to 2022 and minus Hurricane Ian and Winter Storm Elliott kind of at the end of the year, that there wasn't as much wind and hail activity in the summer. And you go back to this year, and I think I saw a stat that there was the most billion-dollar catastrophic type events in a year ever on record. And you see some of those things where you just have these wild swings. And what we're seeing is when you have storms, they've been on a larger magnitude. And so obviously that's going to impact, frequency and obviously what it costs ultimately to restore people. I think specifically from us, like what I would probably call out is what we see on the impact of those things happening is with consumers, with our members, is getting timely repairs done from good contractors, reputable contractors. It's we can get out there and respond pretty quick. Teams on the ground, we're out there within days, writing checks, getting people settled. But the bigger problem becomes getting their property restored, getting a roofer. When you get large, wind and hail situations, it can be months to protect the property, right? Depending on type of damages, you've got tarps and roofs and different things, and that's where we see more of on the member side their challenges with getting repairs done. And you want them to use a reputable contractor. It's something we talk about to prevent fraud, to make sure that they're in good hands, that they can get timely and accurate work done. Past that, it's not only the contractor. Part of the reason the contractors are delayed is they can't get materials, right? And so there's a whole cycle. And obviously, coming out of the COVID situation, it created a lot of supply chain challenges. And we're seeing some of that stabilize, but there's still times when supplies dry up and it's difficult getting things, right? If you were to look back at the Fort Myers area after the hurricane, like there's still a lot of homes going through and trying to get repairs done and things happening in the Florida market. And so that's something that for us, we're working on. How do we have a strong repair network? How do we make sure that we're giving our members resources to help them really just get their property restored, protect, and make sure that there's no further damage?
Thanks, Matt. I wonder if you what your take is, Chad, because as you said, you've been in the game for 20 years, and how do you see the current situation in terms of cat claims, cat severity, frequency? And Matt was talking a lot there around building a strong repair network and a strong response to the events which are happening. How does this year or the last 2 years rank in your 20-year experience?
Yeah, so I mean, around the cat frequency and severity, we're seeing obviously a lot more catastrophes across the PCS events, your hailstorms, winter storms. I think we just had 3 in a row in the last week of winter storms and PCS events. I think we're already up to like 24, 14, or 17. So that's 17 PCS events, and we're in, the 18th of January. So, I mean, the frequency, the way we adapt to this increase is building kind of that relationship with our partners, with our contractors, making sure everybody's equipped and ready to go. Sometimes resources they dwindle a little bit down once you have so many storms, because you got so many resources in so many different areas. So building those partnerships, making sure we have enough partnerships in play. We usually carry a tier 1, which is our first tier, our deployment. We have a tier 2 and then a tier 3. So, we've actually haven't gotten into tier 3, which is good, but we have gotten into tier 2 this past year and a half due to all the claims. So with that, I'm seeing a lot of drive to make claim settlements a lot quicker, faster, and easier for the customer. There's a lot more expectations from the insureds now, because a lot more have more experience with damages, and they expect a little bit more, which is fine. I would too. And so they have, something to compare it to, because, 2 weeks ago I had this and it was done in 2 weeks. Now I have this and I should be done in 2 weeks. So we're trying to figure out a way to make claim settlements faster, easier, and maintain quality, obviously. And we're also having a big drive on adjuster experience. There's times where we do have to use independent adjusters to deploy out in the field and also behind the desk. So we're looking for the experience level. We're not just pulling resources. We're trying to keep those resources with a high experience level, and also keep them trained and skilled up. Another thing, I don't know if we're talking about Florida, but we're seeing a lot of things with Florida, with all these PCS events, all these storms, and multiple hurricanes and such. Reinsurance is becoming something that we need to focus on the carrier level. Same thing on the carrier level is, we're having a lot of other carriers leave the state, not us, obviously, but other carriers are leaving, and it's a little more difficult for insureds to find insurance, and to find insurance at good rates. And some of them are being left in the dark when their carrier can't provide or cover the coverages, or they leave and cancel them mid-season. So we try to make sure that we have our agents out there, we're marketing and we're trying to give those people those coverages and try not to have that lapse due to so many storms coming through and how you have to be ready year round now.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for another hour around the responsibility of insurers not to abandon populations in terms of different states. You know, we can talk about the West Coast in California as well as Florida and other situations where some of the major carriers in our US network have decided we're not going to do this anymore because we can't do it from a profitability point of view, but from a consumer point of view, you know, the insurers are there to protect them, and there has to be an end game where the resolution is met. Jeanette, I wonder if you could give us some insight. It's clear from what Matt and Chad are saying is that there is a situation here where the frequency is probably a little bit on the rise. And what is also clear is that insurers need partnerships. They need people outside of the carrier community to support them in achieving their goal. I wondered how you can speak on that in terms of Clearspeed as part of that overall network and that overall supportive network when we're seeing a lot of cat claims and catastrophic situations happening.
So I think one of the trends I've seen in the last probably 5 or 6 years is around the frequency and severity. We've kind of touched on it, but claims are not only more unpredictable, but supply chain costs have changed. So it's not just the cost of our partners, it's the actual repair costs that have gone up. And we can't keep up with rate, right? And so in states like Florida and California, where you get these absolute massive destruction at, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars, you can't price fast enough to make up for it. So it comes back to the people and the tools. You know, what do you have that's in your control during that catastrophe? So I think someone had touched on it, using a tool that is simple and effective like Clearspeed. It's not something that makes the process longer, whether you're using an internal CAT team or you're outsourcing to IAs. It's something that helps them direct that claim. And ultimately, everybody said it multiple times on the call, pay what you owe as fast as you can, but you want to pay what you owe. So how are you able to still investigate the claim according to your claims guidelines while expediting the processing of the claim for the customer journey, right? So using something like Clearspeed, again, you can put it at FNOL, so it's not disrupting whether you're using your internal desk team or an external. It's just helping them make a better decision faster and getting that claim in the right hands faster, which is what you ultimately want to do, especially when it's the people who are in front of your customers. So I think utilizing technology, I mean, we'll probably come up somewhere and start talking about drones, right? Drones give you a perspective of what the damage could be, what the house or the car looked like. But when you're looking at like geocoding tools, that helps guide your team and your plan and know exactly where the damage is, where you have to deploy a team. But once you get there and you're on the ground and there's no electricity and people don't have hotel rooms and, you know, things of that nature, sometimes I think where I'm seeing technology augment the process is when you're getting new teams of CAT adjusters. You know, for a while, we had the same people on our CAT teams for 10 and 15 and 20 years, and now we have different turnover, right? So we get newer people in. How do you use your tools to help aid the investigation without slowing it down?
As Jeanette, yeah, that's a really good point. I think it talks to the complexity of how the whole piece fits together. Jennifer, would you like to talk a little bit about the CAT process with Beazley and how you and your colleagues are responding to the situation in 2023 and as we kick off in 2024 with CAT claims? What's the current thinking around how you fulfill this requirement?
I think we're in the same boat as pretty much everybody. We're, you know, trying to be prepared ahead of time, make sure we've got the boots on the ground and know what we're looking at. And we do obviously utilize, as Jeanette said, like the geocoding and our satellite imagery. You know, our actuaries and people can pull our policy numbers and addresses. And if we've got a hurricane coming, they can like, oh, this is our exposure in this general area, and kind of have that anticipatory information, which does benefit some planning and getting all of our people ready to go and what we're doing. So, I mean, we use technology in that aspect. We try to prepare, make sure that we've got our favorite field adjusters ready to go and identified, and the experts identified that we want to use. When we know there's a big cat coming, there is a lot of internal conversations with our team, you know, regular meetings and updates about how we're going to handle it and the approach we're going to take, and, you know, try to document our losses as quickly as we can and pay what we owe as quickly as we can to get our customers back on their feet. So.
Great. So a lot of that, you know, you're very clearly customer centric and talking about speed and the end situation and a resolution for the customer, which somehow compensates for the experience that they've had. I wonder, Matt, can I turn to you around the CAT experience for the USAA customers? What's proving really impactful at the moment in terms of what you're changing and manipulating within your team? Is technology having a big impact? Is some of the trusted partnerships that you're having an impact, or the process? How are you making strides for your customer at the moment?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of things that you know, we're doing that are you know, things you're seeing trends in the industry around technology, right? We've talked about drones and other things that are there. I'll anchor to a couple things that are at the end of the day are critical, but it's not complex. Respond timely, get out there, inspect quickly, and get them settled. Like it's not complicated. And when you don't do those things right, the claim doesn't go well. And so for us, like there's key toll gates in the claims that we look at, we measure, we analyze on an event and on an aggregate basis, like over the course of a year, to understand and assess performance. And then from there, like obviously you're developing a plan and process improvements to help ensure that you're responding appropriately. I like past that, we've invested a lot in training our workforce, making sure that they have the right skill set. There's a lot of great training out there. You know, Hague, for example, has a lot of great roof training materials that is widely used within the industry. And so when you can leverage those things to get the right people on the claim with the right speed, typically it's going to go well. And I go back to what, you know, I kind of talked about as one of the priorities, having the right level of resiliency. You know, Chad talked about those 4 hurricanes in 2004. I was a part of that too, but you know, all it takes is 2 back-to-back large storms and it can completely cripple your organization. And so that's something that we're continuously planning for with, you know, these worst case scenario type events. If you had back-to-back large storms, what type of resource strain would that be? And so you're constantly looking through people, process, and technology of where can I go faster? How can I expedite the process? We have been using drones and aerial imagery for many years. I think it's kind of standard now. A lot of companies are using that, but the capabilities have advanced such that you can geotag properties and get the information you need and get it in the hands of your adjusters to expedite settlement. And when you have true catastrophic situations, you know, and maybe a fire or homes are burnt to the ground, it's pretty easy to you know, move the claim forward to a settlement. And then that helps reduce bottlenecks in your process, right? That happen at first notice of loss or happen at the entry point. And then you can divert resources into those areas where it's most needed. And so that's the way, you know, I know myself and my team are thinking about it, thinking about how we can serve. But again, it goes back to, if you can't see the performance at the toll gates clearly, like I would start there and look at how do you adjust and then react appropriately.
Thanks, Matt. I think what was really important there in terms of what I heard, responding timely to an event is crucial for a customer, right? And settling your claim. The pressure point comes where the insurer has a series of events, and perhaps their ability to respond is affected because they're under pressure. And if the insurer is under pressure because of the frequency of events, um, you know, perhaps the customer can suffer. So where the question is, where does the insurer pull for a support system when the severe events are happening and their internal infrastructure is, feeling the pressure? Jeanette, you actually might better respond to that directly because we're talking about speed of response, effectiveness. How can the insurer be supported when they are under pressure? What do Clearspeed do for an insurer under pressure?
Yeah, I think the frequency of the back-to-back storms, right? It's you expect from your actuaries, you understand somewhat a similar type of storm, but it doesn't matter. Mike Tyson says, right, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So when you get these anomalies, which are no longer anomalies, back-to-back storms used to be something that we didn't see, and now we're having more 100-year storms. So I think whether it's your own team, going back to the resources, it's making sure that when they're out on the field, your boots in the ground have everything that they need to process the claim as quickly as possible. So again, using Clearspeed as a triage tool, again, you're able to take those claims that you know can be fast tracked and paid, and it's within minutes. So it's actually taking that human element out of it where they might have to make a decision, especially if you're going into your tier 2 and tier 3. I mean, that's the worst case scenario is you have to run the business while you're handling the CAT claims, but sometimes that frequency drives you to pull other adjusters in. So now you might have something across all of your claims, right? That frequency can impact the normal running of the business claims, where a tool or technology like Clearspeed would be able to help you on the regular running of the business claims as well as your CAT claims. So any tool that helps you get that claim to the right person to pay faster is that expediting that everyone's talking about. And that's very hard to do with typical claim systems. You almost either need a partner or you need technology to be able to do that quick triage in the beginning of a CAT claim.
Yeah. Chad, can you give us a bit of an insight from Tower Hill on what's being impactful in terms of bringing about a great CAT experience for your customer base? What's making a difference in terms of, we talked a lot about partnerships and speedily resolutions and technology, but from your experience, what's really making a difference?
So I think it was Matt that mentioned, multiple storms. So one of my first learning experience was actually my first year with Tower Hill was, I think it was Hubert and then Irma, right? So at Hubert, everybody went to Texas. Resources were dwindled. Not even a couple days later, or even 5 days later, we have one of the hugest storms ever to hit Florida, Irma coming straight up. So resources were dwindled. I've had meetings with people. It was my first, like I said, it was my first year as a CAT director, running the show, and then I have meetings with folks that are been there for 20, 25, 30, 40 years saying, I've never seen this in my life. I've never seen this in my life, panicking. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is it's a big situation. So resources are big. And so what I learned from that is that we implement a turnkey model. Instead of waiting on the storm to hit and then getting your resources, I have teams that I keep on year round. And then some, if they don't perform, we move them. We bring some people in. We do a lot of requests for proposals every year to bring in new bodies. But I've been lucky, and I've had 4 or 5 teams that are just really good, and we keep them on year round. So whenever anything does come or poke its head up, depending on the size of it, I'll activate 3 of them. If it's a big one, I'll activate all 5 of them. and they're all ready to go. They're already in, they know the process. They know how to get, bodies in the door. They know how to activate our system. They know how to work our system. So it's kind of that turnkey model, which makes things a lot easier, less stressful. You're not running around looking for bodies and panicking because one vendor then bails out and says, nope, someone else got me. And then of course I'm kind of just echoing what everyone else said is, aerial imagery is a big thing. It's good to keep it at the desk and settle it quickly using aerial imagery. If you can scope down on the home and do your designs, your dimensions and everything like that to figure out what's damaged. Another thing is the AI. I like AI damage imagery, if that's the right term. I'm not sure, but they do flyovers and then they can color code it on our dash to see homes that have what's the severity, light, moderate, severe, or total. And it can also classify it and we can filter it down to roof only or exterior only or shed only and so forth. So those help us kind of streamline and triage those claims so that they can get handled quickly. And if we see these totals, we can get on them right away. And it's a canvas, so we can send a group of people out to one area and knock it all out versus just sending people that, windshield time and overlapping and such. Specialized teams is another one I believe in, and I think some people said that they have something like that in place. It's really good. If we have PA attorney rep files, because you'll get them straight through the door, we have a team that handles that. So they know the ins and outs, all the statutes, they know exactly what needs to do. If you have your light losses, we call that kind of the one and done model, where we have a team that just handles that on the inside. They have SimBuilty experience or Xactimate experience. They can write it up and use the aerial imagery. We also like to use specialized teams as it comes to the total loss. Those big claim losses, those are more of our specialized teams that can deal with the customer. You got a lot of emotion behind that. And these teams are very good in communicating. They've shown year after year that they can get on the phone, make that 24-hour contact, and then resolve the claim with the insured and show that empathy and the sympathy and so forth. And then the last thing I had is, I think that what has really worked for us is transparency. There shouldn't be anything that's hidden from the customer. I mean, they should know exactly what's going on with their claim. If I could let them mirror exactly what I'm doing in the claim file, I'm fine with that. They need to see what's going on. So we've been working on our customer portal so they can see everything, right? They know everything. I see timelines. They see everything that's been done, a check posted, and when it's cashed, or not when it's cashed, when it's issued. Just having that transparency with the customer helps them be at ease. And it's not like, because some people get like, where's my money? What's going on? What's happening? They can see that. They can see exactly what's happening. We're not hiding anything from you. If you have a question, you can text us or, send us a text message or a message through our system and talk to us that way. Whatever works for you, we try to accommodate. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do to help alleviate some of the stresses of the customer, but also the stresses on the carrier.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, there's a lot in there, and definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's really impressive, to be honest. I think the transparency point, just working backwards through some of your the things you've noticed or pointed out. From a customer point of view, you want to know what's going on. It's like if you use the company Adobe and you're sharing documents and contracts between different parties, people see this happened at this time and this person viewed and this is approved, etc., etc. That's kind of similar to what's going on in your insurer situation, because the customer's been notified of each level of approval and transparency and etc., etc. What was also really cool to hear was it's clear that you use a lot of specialized groups and intelligence groups so that you have a clear picture of what's going on, whether that's internal or external, but it gives you a full picture. In a situation, you've got boots on the ground or data points where you can see how the situation is developing and what that is going to mean from your point of view as a leadership in the cat claims situation. Matt, did you have any comments off the back of that? I would love to hear how familiar that felt to you from a USAA point of view compared to Tower Hill. does some of that stuff resonate, or how do you differ from that, or how are you similar to that process?
Yeah, and are you asking in terms of like response and challenges with resources and moving around with different events? Yeah. Look, I think it just depends. Like, USA, we're a top five. I think actually we're the number 3 homeowners carrier right now. In my role, it's not only property response. I think most of our answers and stuff around property claims, but auto claims is a big piece of it, right? And that's something we own. And so you're constantly looking at resources of how do you move it out? How do you respond? I think it goes back to, you got to have a diversified strategy with multiple internal resources, multiple suppliers, and then technology. And then through that, understanding the landscape, like what's your policies enforce, what are your vehicles enforce in the different areas. And through that, we've got a dedicated analytics team that can help us look at, what the different exposure is in the different areas, so we can do some pre-planning as we go into these events. Obviously, type of storm is gonna differ. With the hurricane, you see it coming, right? We're watching it spin up wherever it's at, and you can kind of plan a little bit differently. If you get a tornado response, as that happened early December in the Fort Campbell area, like that's a little bit different. It hits, damage is immediate, it's severe, and you're responding and moving resources around. But if you've got different suppliers in different areas and states, it helps balance where people are at, and having different pieces of the claims potentially handled by different groups helps, you move claims through those toll gates. That's something we measure. It's something we look at. What's our speed to serving? And so through that differentiated approach, that really helps us drive success.
Okay. Just a reminder for anyone who's listening around Q&A, if you've got a question or a comment, throw it in and we'll try and address that as part of the final section of the webinar. I just want to bring up fraud, and how you guys feel about that in terms of the potential for increased fraud, potentially following a cat event. How do we keep an eye on that? How are we monitoring that? How do we feel about the fraud situation? Jeanette, can I start with you from Clearspeed's perspective, and then maybe we'll ask the carriers about how they're mitigating fraud.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of our conversations about been that front end and the customer experience and paying the claims, but we've all had to deal with those long tail claims, and getting a claim to the SIU department and having an adjuster focus on identifying the fraud. We've all gone through, we're talking about an auto claim. We've all been through hailstorms where somebody takes a ball peen hammer, and we know we've seen it 1,000 times, but how do you handle that claim expeditiously? So again, Clearspeed's one of those tools. It's not just at FNOL that helps you get it into the right hands, but say it's in the SIU department and they're trying to do more investigations than they probably have done in a year when you have these kind of back-to-back events. So Clearspeed would again be able to be a simple tool to hone in on what you specifically want to find out from that insured. And it's not even the fraudsters are using the tools. All the tools that we're talking about, they're getting smarter. But when you talk about a property claim, it's more the soft fraud. It's like, oh, I've been paying my premiums for years and years. Yeah, I know my roof had damage on it, or I know there were dents in the car. There's been study after study that, there's no remorse when they're reporting it. It's like, it's just all loss. I've paid the insurance, but we do have to pay what we owe because we are also responsible for the IBNR and the back end and the reserving, and that all plays into cost and profitability for our organizations. And as claims people, that's our responsibility. So we don't need just front end tools when you're talking about a catastrophe. You also need tools on those long tail claims, because you want to make sure that they're not bleeding into another year's reserves, or you're not be able to control what you're paying because you've got a different kind of investigation versus just being there, boots on the ground.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. And we have to be conscious of this always going forwards in terms of the situations. But I think often it's partners and technologies can help us open our eyes to the fact that a fraudulent situation may be occurring or be ongoing. I'm slightly conscious of time, so it would be great to hear a little bit about what you guys are excited about in terms of current or future projects. Jennifer, can you talk to us a little bit about, from the Beasley perspective, on any recent projects or initiatives that are going on in this space, what you're working on, what you're innovating, what you're developing at the moment?
Um, we actually had a meeting about an hour before this where we were talking about some new technology that helps eliminate fraud, not necessarily with our property group, but we were also on with our London team, and there's a program that can help. It like scans documents and photos and can tell you if it's a duplicate, like if it's out there in the system somewhere. And that's something that is being looked at. It's not implemented yet, but that actually came up in a meeting this morning. Um, we try to use some technology when it's appropriate. Like if there's areas we can't get into, that's something that we're doing more and more. Like when the Sanibel Island and the Maui fires, those things, we use satellite imagery and drones when it wasn't safe for boots on the ground, so that we could go ahead and identify those total losses. And so we're always looking at ways that we can move forward and try to get things moving faster. But that boots on the ground is still so important, in documenting. Like Jeanette said, we have the responsibility for underwriting, to underwriting and to the company to make sure that we're, documenting everything precisely. And but we are looking at ways that technology can assist us with all of those capacities. So.
Thanks, Jen. What about you guys, Chad and Matt, around maybe future projects that you're excited about, or future innovations in terms of cat claims? What would you like to see be brought in? If you were going to drop tools today, leave, and spend the rest of your life on an island in Hawaii, what would you like to see happening right now? Chad, I'll come to you first.
Are you saying what would I invent in order to get on that island and relax? Or
No, what would you like to, if you were going to get out of the game right now, and we're talking about the next couple of years, what would you like to see come in as an innovation or a change to make the cat claims space an improved situation?
I think one of the big things that I would like to see, and it's getting better over the years, is like I said before, aerial imagery and AI generation for identifying damages. I would like to see this more on a kind of a real-time basis. There is quite a delay at times before you get some of that flight data. I would like to, see some kind of, potential of satellite use or something like that, where we can get real-time data that's the storm, right? It could be 3 hours after the storm. I would like to just have that. 2 weeks or a week later, I mean, a week's okay, right? You can handle the claims that come in around that time. But 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a delay for flyover data is just, it defeats the purpose. So if we could figure out a way to get real-time data and have it generated, through satellite use or whatever the mechanism is, would really make things a lot easier and quicker for us to kind of get rid of that delay. I would say another thing is I like weather data reporting, like a dashboard. We have a dashboard that we utilize. It's called, we'll have a pre-landfall dashboard, and then we have a post-landfall dashboard. The pre-landfall dashboard, the system that we use, it works really well. It helps us get a good idea of where the wind zones are going to be and what the exposure could possibly be. But we do have a lot of data that's not, it's not rapidly updated and quickly. They're getting better about it, but having your data points, maybe your claims that are kind of outlined in those wind zones, and having a ability to see kind of a graphic that makes it easier for you to identify and get out, pre-storm text to that group and say, hey, you're within that 80 plus, wind zone or 100 plus wind zone. Here's your information. Here's how you can put in a claim. Since you're already out there, we can go ahead and make sure that you're set up on the portal, kind of getting ahead of it, and having that data so that we're not just bombarding thousands of people. We're bombarding, 200 or 250 that are within that zone that it applies to, right? It's not just a generic email or generic text. So having that information really would, the real-time information, but also the real-time data for the exposure rates, using the weather data works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Matt, what's upcoming for you and your team in terms of what you're excited about and upcoming projects? And do any of those feed into Chad's ambitions around real-time data, increased insights, and having a complete real-time picture of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, Chad nailed it. That the ability to predict and leverage weather to get ahead, maybe prevent loss, but also help you shape your response. I mean, that's critical. For us as part of our strategy and vision statement across USA, it's really about protecting lives, and so that's sometimes that's on the forefront. In tornado situations or flash floods, like how do you get that information even faster to our members, and so that we're protecting them. I would say the other topic, and we didn't talk too much about this, but the cost of insurance has become really expensive. We all work in the market, and I think when friends, neighbors, family talk to us, it's like, wow, my premiums or this or that, and you look at these events and what's going on, and there just needs to be more effort on preventing and mitigating damages. Specifically, I think about freeze events, these large storms that come through. A lot of these situations are preventable if you have a generator, if you have a different plumbing setup, if you take more proactive steps, leak detection devices, and so that's one area that we're really focusing on, is how to help our members, protect them from having to experience a claim, having to pay a deductible, right? Stuff like that that's going to put them out of pocket. And so I think that's something that's important just for long term in our industry. Costs can only go up so much before it starts to have a severe impact.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the costs are high because there is a lack of prevention from the consumer side in terms of how they are prepared for a natural disaster situation. If we can create a culture where we are preventing and mitigating damage, then the consumer is happier because they are prepared, and the insurer does not have a situation where they're throwing huge amounts of money to satisfy a consumer situation. So how do we do that? I guess through education and also through that real-time data. If we can understand exactly what's going on all of the time across the geography, it's only going to help both the insured and the insurer. I know we're running out of time. Jeanette, we've talked about so much today, and there's a lot going on in terms of CAT claims. It's a really important area. Do you have any reflections on how the insurers are coping? I think the insurers are doing a great job, but also how we can move forwards a little bit.
So I think from Clearspeed's perspective, we help insurers globally, right? And we're in the US in particular, we have CATs that are unlike some other countries. And I think what we heard from all the panelists today was it's the whole life cycle of the CAT claim. It's from beginning to end. Carriers can't do it by themselves. They need to use technology. They need to use external resources. So finding the best fit and the best partnership of that technology and resource for your CAT plan, I think is really ideal. And Chad said in the beginning, every year now, we used to have CAT plans that were in place for 2, 3, 4, 5 years because the storms were more predictable. Now you really have to take that CAT team and that CAT plan every year and say, what is new in the market as a tool? Is it technology? Is it a service? Is it a person? Whatever it may be, but just understanding your book and your customer experience, and then what you're looking for from your exposure perspective of paying what you owe.
Right. Yeah, that's a great overall perspective. And I would just ask all of our panelists maybe to give our audience just 30 seconds on where we're headed. What would you like to see in terms of the cat claims ecosystem? What would be maybe one improvement or one step forward for all of us to make over the next year or two? So just 30 seconds each. Chad, I'll start with you. Where would you like to see us go?
Like I said before, I would say I'd like to see we increase transparency within the claim systems and with the claims process, making sure they kind of have that real-time aspect of what's going on with the claim and access to it. Another thing that I'd like to see with as it applies to the cat claims itself is, again, technology, advancing, better ways to get data on a pre-storm event, so we know exactly what our exposure is, and so that we can prepare the customers, but also on the post, getting that real-time information so that we can see exactly, where the damages are and respond accordingly.
Brilliant. Matt, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, really for me, weather, advanced weather notification that has the ability to integrate into our ecosystem to help members be safe in an event. I think the technology is starting to get there. There's some companies looking at it, but I think that could just really benefit all and have just a greater impact on the entire kind of catastrophe ecosystem.
Thank you, Matt. And Jennifer, your comments to close.
Sure. I think Chad has probably had one of the best comments about that real-time data. I mean, I would love to be able to have more accurate identification of our pre-loss exposure, identifying how much exposure our company has in certain areas that are destined for those storms. And that real-time data post-loss, if we could get more accurate real-time information as soon as that storm hits or shortly thereafter, it's a game changer in how we approach it and the bodies we need and the experts that we need.
Very good. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody, and also good luck in the coming 12 months dealing with the catastrophic situations. And I hope everybody is as safe as possible. And I know the insurers and their partners are doing everything they can to inform us, to educate us, to protect us. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chad, Jennifer, Matt, Jeanette. Please, I'm sure everybody would agree, connect with us on LinkedIn, stay in touch, continue the conversation. If you'd like to learn a bit about how these companies are dealing in the space, check out their websites. I would certainly encourage anybody to research a little bit more around how Clearspeed are interjecting in the claims ecosystem. But stay safe, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, and goodbye.